Hey everyone, in this video we'll continue our NextJs and Django REST framework project. This time we'll build up a basic API using similar serializers and view sets as last time, but we'll also build some models that we will use to save all the data. This should be most of what we will need to build our backend, minus a couple additions later on, so after this video we can focus mainly on building the front end with NextJs. Let's go ahead and get started by writing some classes in our models.py file. Okay, so first things first, we need to go and import the user model because we'll need to use that here in a little bit. So what we'll do here is we'll do from Django.contrib.auth import user. Okay, now we have that imported. Let's go ahead and create our first model. So what we'll do here is we'll create a class and we'll call it review, and this will hold the review information. So we'll do it from models.model, like most models in Django. And just real quick before we do this, this will be very similar to the previous video as well as all the previous projects. So I'm not going to go over all the super basics because we've already done lots of videos with that. If you're not familiar with that, you may want to go watch some of the previous videos and the first video in this project as well. But that said, let's go ahead and build this review model. So we'll do a title and set that equal to models.char field. And we'll set a max length equal to 255. Next, we'll go ahead and do a content variable, and this will be the actual body of the review, and this will be a models.text field. Next, we'll hold a variable called stars, and this will be either the 1-star, the 2-star, 3 or 4 or 5-star review they're giving. So in the GUI, we'll have some sort of button they can press and change the number of stars. And so we'll just hold an integer here for the number of stars selected. So we can use an integer field for that. Next, we'll go ahead and add a user to this. So we'll do a models.foreign key, and we're going ahead and link this to the user, in which we imported above. And then we want an on delete. So if we delete the user, we'll go ahead and delete all the reviews as well. We don't need to keep those around. So we'll do a models.cascade on that. And that's, and then finally, the last thing we need is we need to add a business to review, but we haven't written our business model. So we'll come back to this at the end and add that. Next, we'll go ahead and create our category model. So we'll create a category, and this will obviously be the category of the business. So at the restaurant, they'll be in the food and dining, or whatever we want to call it, category. If they're a gym, they'll be in the recreation or whatever else. And so this category will have 3 fields: a name, which will be a char field that just holds the name of the category. We'll set a max length once again of 255. Next, we'll have an ordinal field, and this ordinal field will just be a way to order the categories. So this way we can make sure that they show up in the right order we want them to. So if we want the food and dining to show up first, we can set it with a lower number, and we'll sort this. And we'll sort the categories by this field. So 1 will show up first, 2 will show up second, kind of etc. from there. So this will be just a models.integer field, just so we can hold an integer that we can sort by. Okay, and finally, we need to also add the business to this, but since we haven't created that class yet, we'll leave that blank for now and come back to that in a second. So finally, we'll create that business model. And this will be a models.model. And this one will be much more complicated than before, so we'll go through this slowly at first, and hopefully this will make sense. So first we'll add just our basic fields. So a name, which will equal a models.char field with a max length, once again equal to 255. Then we'll have a description. We want this to have a kind of a description of the business. So we'll hold that in a description field, and this will be a models.text field right there. And next we want to have a price range. And this one will be a little bit more complicated. So what we'll do here is we'll do a models.char field, but inside this char field, we're going to pass in a couple things. First, we'll give it a max length, and this will be a max length of 10. And these choices will be set in advance. So what we'll do here is we'll do a choices variable, and we'll set this equal to price choices, which we haven't created yet. We're going to create that here in a second. Make sure it's in all caps like that. And then finally, we'll have a default value, but for now, I'm gonna leave that blank because we haven't created our values yet, so it doesn't really make sense to put that yet. So let's go ahead and create our price choices now. So what this is gonna look like up here, and you could also sort this as an integer field, but I want to use choices here because we haven't really used that much, and I think it'd be interesting to use it here. So what we'll do here is we'll create a few different variables. We'll create a low variable, and we'll set this equal to a $sign, and I'm putting them in all caps because they're constants technically in this case, and so we'll make them all caps here to differentiate them. And next we'll do a mid underscore low, and this will equal $2 signs. So you can see what we're doing here is we're setting a kind of a representation of the price range. If they're very expensive, we'll have more dollar signs, and if they're cheaper restaurants, they'll have less dollar signs. This is similar to other review sites you'll find online, and so we're just going to kind of mimic that here. Next, we'll have a mid, and this will be $3 signs. And next, we'll have a mid underscore high, and this will be $4 signs. And finally, we'll have a high, and this will be $5 signs. And so we'll save the actual visual representation in our models, so we don't have to actually make any change in our front end to display it correctly. We can just grab the value and display it. And we'll also create a price choices list. And so to build this input, what we'll need is we'll need to create a list. Inside that list, we'll store tuples that contain exactly two items. The first item being the value, and the second one being the human readable value they'll actually select inside of the input. So we'll create our prices choices variable, which will match this prices choices variable we set down here. This will be equal to a list, and inside this list here, we'll create a tuple. So we can do that here with our just parentheses. And the first value will be the actual value. In this case, it'll be these variables up here that we created, or these constants up here we created. So we'll put low and put comma, and we'll put a human readable value for this. In this case, it'll be, we'll call it cheap. Actually, we'll call it very cheap. And then next, we'll put a comma at the outside the parentheses. So make sure you're outside, because each of these inputs needs to be a tuple. Next we'll have is the next value, which is mid low, and we'll set a human readable value of cheap. We'll keep going down the line here. Next value we have is mid. And this will be moderate. And next we'll have is mid high. And this will be expensive. And finally, we'll have one more tuple here of high, and we'll have this be very expensive. So if this doesn't make sense, we'll go through it in the actual API and the web browser here in a second, and hopefully I'll clear this up. But what we're doing here is we're creating an input. This is the value, and this is what's going to show up in the field in the input as one of the choices. So they'll have these choices: very cheap, cheap, moderate, expensive, very expensive, when they create a business. So it'll ask them how expensive are the items in this business, and they can choose on these values, and then we can pull these values out of our database and display it on the GUI as kind of a visual representation of what we put here. Hopefully that makes sense. Finally, on our price range input down here, we want to add a default value. So I'm going to add a default and set that equal to mid. Just for now, we'll make mid the default. You can choose whatever you want, but in this case, I think that might work best here. Okay, now that we have that one out of the way, let's go ahead and finish up the rest of our inputs, and the rest of these should be fairly straightforward. So the next thing we want is all of our different address inputs. So first we'll have a street address. And this will be equal to models.charfield. We'll set a max length of this equaling to 255. Next we'll have is a city, and this will be equal to models.charfield. And this will also have a max length of 255. Next, we want to go ahead and create what I'm going to call a region. So in America here, this would be the state. In other countries, I'm not really sure what it would be. So I'm going to call it region, just as kind of a general term that could be used, hopefully for multiple countries. You can name this something else if there's something better that works. But for this example, I'm going to use region. So what I want to do here is do models.charfield once again, but this max length I'm only going to set to, let's go ahead and set it to 50. So we'll do a max length equaling to 50, and that should work for most places, hopefully. Next we'll have a postal code, And I'm going to go ahead and set this to a models.char field again. And this will be a max length. I'm going to set it at 50. I think that should work for most places. It definitely worked for America. I'm not sure about elsewhere. Hopefully that'll work there as well. Next, we'll do a country, and this will be a models.char field to save the country name. And this will be a max length equaling to, we'll say 50. Okay, and now we have that out of the way. We're going to add 3 more fields here. We're add a URL, a phone, and hours. And so for the URL, I'm going to go ahead and just create a URL field and set this equal to models.url field. And we're going to set the max length to 255. By default, this should set a max length of 200, but I'll make it a little longer in case there's a longer URL that someone wants to input here. They can do that, although 200 probably would be fine as well if you want to keep it like that. Next, we'll make a phone, and I'm going to set this as well to a char field, so models.char field, and I'll set a max length equaling to 255, which is probably much longer than we need, but it'll work in this case. And finally, we'll add in hours. This will be like the operating hours of the store. So this once again will be a models.char field, and we'll set a max length of 255 here as well. And that should be it for all of our fields. Hopefully it all made sense. I ran through these last ones pretty quickly because they were pretty straightforward to what we've done before. And we also have this a little more complicated choices one as well. And now that we have our business model created, we can go ahead and link this business model to both our category and to our review model. So let's go to the bottom of each of those and add one more field. So here we'll do a business field and set that equal to, we'll do a models.foreign key, and we'll do business, and we'll do an on delete equaling models.cascade. And then our category, once again, we'll do a business as well. We'll set this equal to models. I'm going to do a many to many field in case we want to put a business in multiple categories. We'll have that option here as well. And so once again, we'll put it in quotes. We'll put business. And for the models within our file here, we need to make sure you put them in quotes and make sure we have our user models. Since we imported it up here, it's not in quotes. It's just a normal variable name. Okay, there we go. So now we have a review model. We can store our review data and we can link it to a business. So we can grab all the reviews for a specific business. We have a category model, which we link to a business. So we can grab all the businesses within a category. And then we have actual business information we can show on the business page as well. And that should be it for that. I'm going to go ahead and save this and go ahead and migrate the changes and make sure everything works okay. Okay, so I have a terminal window here open with my open in my directory on my backend. So I do an ls here. We'll have a manage.py inside this backend folder here. Okay, so what we'll do here now is we'll just run our Python. Or actually, I need to activate a virtual environment. So up here, I have an env folder. So on Mac or Linux, you should be able to do source env/bin/activate to activate that virtual environment. I'll go back into that backend folder here, go and clear the page here and make it a little more easy to read. And now I'm gonna run Python 3 manage.py make migrations. And it says no changes detected. And that's because we never added reviews to our settings.py. So let's go ahead and do that real quick. So inside of our reviews, or our backend folder, that is, we'll go into our settings.py, and instead of installed apps here, we never added reviews. So I'm gonna add that right here and save that. Now let's go ahead and run that command again. And it looks like we have an issue here. Oh, I imported it incorrectly from imported the user model incorrectly. I put Django.contrib.auth. It should be .auth.models right there. Okay, let's try that again. There we go. So now we create our model business and our model review and our model category. Let's go ahead now and run manage.py migrate to migrate those changes. And now with all those changes migrated, we should be good to go with no more errors showing up. Okay, now that our models are done, we can go ahead and build our serializers, which will serialize the Django objects into JSON for us that we can send to our front end. And so we can do that inside of our reviews app, inside of our serializers.py file. So right here, we're going to use a similar serializers we use for our group and user. We're going to use this hyperlinks model serializer. You don't have to, but I'm going to go ahead and use it here. And so that we'll do is instead of creating a PK field like we normally have, we have a URL field, but it works practically the same. So it just is a different way of storing that reference to that object, I guess. So the first thing I'm going to go ahead and do is import all of our models. So from reviews.models import review business and category. And now we can go ahead and build our serializers. So I'm going to go ahead and copy this just to save some time here. And we'll change the group here to be review. Make sure that's a lowercase there. And then down here in our model will be review. And now our fields. Now what we could do here is we could pass in all the fields we want, but there's a kind of a shorthand we can use here. Instead of passing in all the different fields we want to pass in, we can just pass in all of them. And we can do that with double underscore, all double underscore. And this is just a built-in thing in Django that grabs all of the fields for this object for us. So we can just do that and save us some time having to write everything all out like that. I'm going to go ahead and copy this again. Let's go ahead now and create our business serializer. So this will be business. And then down here, this will also be changed to business. And once again, we'll go ahead and grab all the fields. So we'll leave that .all the same, just like that. Finally, we'll grab one more. And this will be category. And this right here is category. And we'll grab all the fields there as well. And so that should be it. So that's all we really need to do for this is just change the model and the name and make sure we grab all the fields. Okay, we'll go ahead and save that. And now we can build our view sets. So like we did previously, we'll build similar view sets to here, but we'll make a couple of changes. So the first things first, we need to go ahead and import all of our serializers we just made. So review serializer, business serializer, and finally category serializer. We also want to go ahead and import all of our models. So from reviews.models, import review, business, category. Okay, let's go ahead and copy this group view set, and we'll use that as a starting point. Oops, let's go ahead and copy everything. Okay, so first things first, we'll change the name from group view set to review view set. And then that query set, we want to grab all of the review objects. So we'll change the group here to review. So we're going review to objects to all to grab all the objects. And the serializer class, we're going to change this here to review serializer that we just created. And now finally here we have the permission classes. And so with our current permission class being set to permissions.isAuthenticated, what that's going to do is it's going to prevent the user from doing anything with this unless they're logged in. But we want users who are not logged in to still be able to view things, just not create things. So we want them to be able to make GET requests to be able to actually, view the businesses, view the reviews without having to log in. And so luckily Django has a built-in permissions for this. We could do an allow all, but that would allow them to then create things without being logged in, which we don't want. So instead we can use is authenticated or read only by just adding or read only at the end. And what this does is it changes it from being have to be logged in to only have to be logged in for like post and put and delete requests. But if you just want to view it, you can just read it only without being logged in. Hopefully that makes sense. I'm going to copy this again here and go do the same thing for business and category. So next we'll have business. So we'll do business view set. And this will be all of the business objects. And this will be business serializer. And then once again, we're going to keep it to be is authenticated or read only because we want them to be able to view the businesses without being logged in. Now the last one we want to do here is the category view set. And here we'll do a category to objects at all. category. And then once again, we want them to be able to view the categories, but not make any changes unless they're logged in. There we go. Okay, so those changes done, all of our view sets should be good to go now. Now the last step is to add the URL patterns for these view sets. And so inside of our URLs.py, we already use this router and registered the routes on the router to do everything for us. It creates all the get, post, put, delete URL patterns for us without us having to do anything. So we're gonna do the same thing here for our other 3 view sets we just created. So do a router.register, pass an R in, and we'll do first reviews. And this will take us to all of our reviews, or all the view sets, all the URLs patterns for the views, I should say. So do views.review group set. And this should be imported already from this views value up here. So we should be good there. Then we'll do a router.register, pass an R, and then we'll do business. So business, and we'll pass in views.business view set. And I put group set up there. I'm not sure what I was doing there. Let's change this to review view set like it should be. Just double check. That's what it says over here. Yes, review view set. Make sure we have that correct. There we go. I'm going to copy this down one more time for our category. And then we'll change the path here to category as well. And that should handle about everything. That should set up all the routes for these view sets. So let's go ahead now and test it out. So I'm going to go ahead and run a Python 3 manage.py run server and see what we get. Okay, so our server is running on port 8000. We're going to go ahead here and reload the page here. And now you'll see instead of just using the groups, we have reviews, businesses, and categories. And actually, it looks like I made this plural, and this plural, but these two are not. So let's go ahead and fix that real quick just to keep it for consistency. It doesn't really matter, but it would, I think, look a little better. Let's do businesses down here and then categories. There we go. Okay. So now we can jump inside of one of here. And right now all we can do is get, and that's because we're not logged in. So we go ahead and here and log in with my account I made last time, and it'll take us here. And now we have the option to post something. So we can add one. So we'll just make something my first review. This is my first review. We'll have a 3-star review. And right now there's no businesses created, so we don't have anything there. So we're gonna go ahead and just post it without a business. Oh, we made business required. Okay, so let's go. That's fine. We should probably make business required anyway. So I'm gonna go ahead and jump back here and create a business first. So the URL will just be HTTP. We'll do localhost 8000. A name will be my first business. Description will be this is my first business. And the price range here. So this is what I talked about earlier. We have our choices here. So we jump back in the code just to go over this one more time. You'll see the options are these options over here. These are the human readable options that shows up in the input. So what we'll see here are those options. Now, when we set this value though, you'll see it's not set to these options. It's set to be these options up here. But this is what it's showing. This makes more sense for the user to see this instead. And so that's why it's set up that way. Okay, so we'll go ahead and pick something. We'll make this, we'll make it expensive. Street address, just we'll do that. And we'll do city, state, 1, 2, 3, 4. And country will be just USA. Phone, we'll do 111. We'll do that phone number here. And we'll do 8 a.m. to 9 p.m. or whatever. Okay, now let's go ahead and post that. And you'll see here, I clicked expensive and we get $4 saved right there. Back in here, that is what on expensive here, we put mid-high, and mid-high is equal to $4. So that's working good as it should. And now it looks like everything saved correctly. So let's go ahead now and jump back and create a category and a review using that business. So we'll go my first review. Content is this is my first review. Stars will be 3. User admin, and we'll select this business object and we'll post that. And it created it well. Okay, let's go and jump back now and create a category and test that out real quick. This will be my test. We'll call it test category. This is an ordinal. We'll set up 1. So make it show up first, and we'll select this to be business object 1, the only one we have. We'll go ahead and submit that. Okay, and there it goes. Now it creates a category for us linked to the business. I can click on that. It takes me to that business right here where I can edit it. I can just do edited and then hit put, and then you'll see it edited our description field for us. Okay, so everything's working good. We can delete it. We can go up here and get it. We can go ahead and back to our business list here and get all of our businesses, add more here, everything else. So this is all working very well. And this is where we're going to stop for today. We just built out most of the API that we'll need. So now we can focus on building the front end. I didn't add any photos or anything else to this, which I may want to come back and do later. So we may come back and add more to this, but for now, this should handle most of what we need to build a basic front end. And that's the focus of the next video. We'll get into NextJS and actually build the JavaScript front end on there. So all the links to this should be in the description below. I'll link to some of the stuff that I talked about in case you want to read up more on it. But other than that, that should really be it. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.